Thank you, Stephen, for mentioning, everybody and all the names. That was very good. Dorrie Shapiro, we knew her as a sister, a nurse, a wife, mother, an aunt, widow. She was a widow, a friend, a volunteer, a member of the Jewish community, and finally a wounded soul. It's no surprise my mother played a lot of roles in her life. After all, a long life means a lot of changes, a lot of stages in life. After my father Selig's death, I drew the most comfort from stories people came and told me during and after his funeral. I heard from people he touched throughout his life, friends he grew with, worked with, fought with. They all knew some and told some story, some aspect of his life and personality that even if I knew it before, told me some new detail, or at least their unique point of view. So that's what I'm going to do here right now. I'm going to give you some stories and vignettes that I carry with me that came to mind that might resonate with you and your experience with Dorrie, that tell something of her character and person. First of all, I remember one family dinner with her sisters Sally and Hilma. The three of them had the most unusual conversation I have ever heard right before we sat down to eat. They all spoke at the same time about three completely different things. They were not trying to convince or refute each other. They just spoke as if no one else was talking. Once in a rare while, for a sentence or two, their conversations would converge, and then just as quickly, they would spin away on their own individual topic. It was just like the pendulum clocks in our house, suddenly all syncing together for a couple of beats, and then they went back to sounding completely random. Neil Simon would have been jealous. I was away at college one time, and I phoned home to my parents. My mother asked question after question about my schoolwork, classes, friends, roommates. I finally asked my father on the phone, did he have anything to say? Did he have anything he wanted to ask? No, he said, I just like to listen to your mother asking the questions. One time she visited me, I took her to an annual Irish music party of a friend near Pittsburgh. It was out in the mountains, and 100+ people came to play Irish music and make apple butter, go on hay rides and sing. Halfway through the night, a woman turned to me and told me she loved my mother and loved her eyes. I said, really? What about my eyes? She said, your eyes draw you and then draw someone to you, and then they stop you at a distance. Your mother's eyes draw you in with no barrier. I went again this past year, and the host, Ray, asked about her. It had been 20 years since she had been there, and he still remembered her. Dorrie had an ideal nursing job, taking blood from donors on the bloodmobile in little towns all over northeastern Pennsylvania. Workers, excitable high school students, people from all walks of life came to give blood. The nurses went on little 2- or 3-day collecting trips. They stayed at the local tavern and went to the bar and eat and have a drink and socialize for the evening. What do you do with the donors, I asked one time. Mostly I talk with them, she answered, when they're giving blood to distract them. Really? What do you talk about? I tell them about you and your brothers, what they're doing, what you're doing, where you are. 90%. I recently studied with Rabbi Eli Seidman on how to conduct funerals and writing eulogies. Rabbi Seidman said, you should ask the family when you sit down with them, with the immediate relatives, what was the most important to the deceased? He said you should ask, but really the answer is 90% of the time they will say family. Family was the most important thing to them. After about 8 years, we finally have in place a family email system that works about 1/10 as well as Dorrie did. She called on the phone and would ask, "Did you remember? Your brother has a birthday next week." Or, "Your cousin Bob is in the hospital. You should call him." Or, "Are you coming to Philadelphia this year for Thanksgiving?" And then finally, Alzheimer's. We all saw it coming. It came little by little by little. Not driving at night, then not driving out of town, then not driving at all. No longer able to read a book. No, not able to even get money out of an ATM machine. Everyone has their own way of dealing with something like that. I made it into an experiment, a scientific experiment. How many things could she lose and still have her identity and still be Dorrie? It's a cruel game to play, but then it's a cruel disease. The noise in her brain got louder and louder and finally drowned out her own voice. In Greek mythology, the river Styx divides our world from the underworld, the world of the dead. Dorrie has been crossing that river for many years, getting further and further away. The fog and the mist from the river made it harder and harder to see her. I've been saying goodbye to her, saying goodbye to my mother for a long time, to bits and pieces of what she was. Now we can say goodbye.